ARE Podcast, Season 1, Episode 3.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. Where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of the ARE Podcast. And as always, we're joined by our co-host, Eric Corey Freed. Welcome, Eric.
Hey there.
And today's topic is all about mindset. And I actually thought we had done something on mindset before, and I asked Eric. And Eric, what was your response?
No, we talk about mindset all the time, but we've never actually done an episode on it.
Which is great, which I'm excited to do, because mindset it's such a, not only a cool sounding buzzword, it's so important not only for this exam, but for life. And so we're going to dive all into that right now. So Eric, how are we going to start this? How are we going to start this mindset talk?
Well, it started really with this quote that I read in an article that got me thinking on this. The quote is from Benjamin Barber, and he's a sociologist, and he said, "I don't divide the world into the weak and the strong, or even into the successes or the failures. I divide the world into learners and non-learners." And so that quote I read in an article, and it got me thinking about this idea of are you a learner or a non-learner? And it led me to this book called Mindset, which then led me to today.
Yeah, let's back up and just on that quote. So I don't divide the world into the weak and the strong, or the successes and the failures. I divide the world into the learners and non-learners. I like that. That's pretty powerful. What I like about it actually is it's not about success or failure. It's about, are you learning or are you not learning? And I think we can attribute that to the ARE, and this is what we're going to talk about during the show. But just my first thoughts on hearing this quote, we go through this ARE process, and we might fail. As you know, it took me 7 years to do it, and you did it in, 16 weeks or something like that?
18, yeah.
18. But we can go through it, and we can fail, and we can learn from our mistakes. Like life, we can apply them, and we take the exam again. And, we keep taking these 6 exams until we get through it, and we learn from each time. And we grow after each one, which is part of this learning process. And I've always considered myself a learner, and always trying to do new things. And
well, you're kind of a great case study for this, because not only are you an architect, not only are you licensed in multiple states, as am I, but you're also a contractor, a real estate agent, a rock climber. And a lot of these things you picked up, I mean, you're old, you're an old guy. So a lot of these things you picked up later in life, you just kept kind of tacking onto them. So you do have this, what we call this growth and learning mindset.
Well, which is interesting, and we'll talk about that fixed versus growth mindset in a second, is, a couple of years ago, I started getting into dirt bikes, and so I could ride dirt bikes with the boys, and took a dirt bike class and learning all about dirt bikes and how to maintain them. But it is that, for me specifically, it's something to do that I guess I feel deep down inside like I have to be learning, or I have to be growing. Otherwise, I just get, I guess stagnant. So we're talking about mindset. So this quote was just in an article, not even in a book.
Right. This is what kind of started me on this pathway to thinking about this process. And got me kind of excited about it.
And where'd you find this article?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I when I find things I like, I save them into a folder, and then I revisit them, and then some of those become podcast topics, some of them become articles, and some of them creep into my books, right? So this is one of those things that I found, but it also then, I try to read a book a month. which isn't a lot, but it's what I can do. And so it also, things like this help me decide, well, what are the next books I want to read? What are the next things I want to focus on?
And so you read this quote, and then you saved it, and then it led you into mindset. Did it lead directly into the book we're going to talk about, or was it a roundabout way?
No, it led into this book that we're going to talk about because the book was mentioned in the article, and so I ordered it on my Kindle, which is, I'm not giving them a plug, I guess, but it's, I immediately ordered it, and then it shows up on my device sitting by my bedside, and then that became the next book I read.
So then, in talking about mindset, and so we have a better understanding about it, it's still funny to me that we haven't done a podcast, a show on this, because we do talk about mindset and attitude. And my guess is if we were to go back and listen to our previous 30 podcasts or so, we probably mention it in every one in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So here, whether we have a positive or negative mindset, we'll talk about that. But our mindset could be what's preventing us from passing the ARE.
Yeah, I mean, think about, those people listening, does any of this sound familiar? Right? You know the material. You're studying for the AREs. You know this material. You've got a few years of great experience under your belt, and yet you're still not passing the exam, and you're not quite sure why. And after listening to literally hundreds of candidates, and have a fair number of them say this to me, I don't get it. I'm doing everything right. Why aren't I passing? I can now tell, honestly, which ones are really going to pass and which aren't. And it's not magic. It's just from they're talking about their approach to learning, I can tell which ones are set up for success and which ones are going to derail themselves. And it's really boils down to this idea of mindset. So this idea of how can you use your mindset, how can you change your mindset to better prepare you to pass the ARE, that's what I want to talk about today.
And I think what's powerful about the mindset is, I've been dealing with CSE candidates or California Supplemental Exam candidates for, 10 years now. I've gotten pretty good at picking out mindset just from emails now. I don't even have to necessarily meet the person. I can just tell by the way an email is written, how, sort of they approach me. I can tell, like, okay, are they in the right mindset or not? Even if after they haven't passed the CSE and then they email me, I can tell based on that email, are they going to get through this? Are they going to stick with it? Or is there a possibility they might just give up, based on they're so distraught? So, mindset shows itself in many ways. And just a plug for you, Eric, or for us, when you mentioned talking to candidates, we have the free 15-minute call with Eric, which you can take advantage of. I encourage you to take advantage of. Just head over to the website, architectexamprep.com. It's on the homepage. It's on the right sidebar at the moment. We do move things around on the website, but that's where it is now. Schedule the free 15-minute call. So take advantage of that.
Those calls have really been, initially we did them as a service just because we were getting so many emails, and honestly, they were a bit of an experiment. Let's try it and see if anybody's interested. Right. And what's been amazing is now I've done hundreds of them, and they're really invaluable, not just to the candidates, I hope, but to me in really hearing what's going on. I guess I anticipated that the calls most of them would be, hey, I don't understand the concept of what is a camber in a beam, or something like that. That's not what the calls are at all. The calls are really them saying, I'm scared about this, I'm nervous about that. It's not really even about the topics. It's about what is the best way I can study? How, what should I be doing? And really is about this idea of their mindset. And they're, again, on these calls, I can tell within a few minutes just by hearing how they talk about the process of studying, which ones are really set up for success and will do well and which ones won't.
And I think it's important. Oh, go ahead.
So I had a call the other day. I won't mention this person's name, but she's taken the same division 11 times. 11. And she's failed 11 times. And aside from that being an immense amount of money and time, she said, she basically was saying, I hate NCARB and I hate this test, and it's so, it's so working against us. And I've been 20 years experience in the field, and why is it taking me this long? And I said to her, you're not going to like what I have to say, but the trouble isn't the test. It's you. You're the trouble. You can hear in your own voice, right, that you've got the wrong attitude and the wrong mindset about this. And she said, yeah, you're right. What do I do? So it almost took her hitting rock bottom of failing 11 times for her to kind of admit that.
Interesting. But what's also interesting is credit to her is, a lot of candidates would have gave up after 3 times. She's obviously hung in there. She's got the will. So it's that little mindset change, that could get her over the hump. And I think it's important to identify what success is in terms of the ARE. Success is getting your license. Success is passing all 6 of the 5.0 exams, or 4.0 if you're, whichever section you're in. Anyway, success is getting your license. That to me, related to the ARE, is the definition of success. Now, how we get there, it could be a very circuitous route. It could be direct, but it also could be very circuitous, meaning we fail a few divisions, we get knocked down a little bit, we get back up. There's no failure in any of that. As long as we're achieving the end goal, which is to receive our license, if we fail, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, but we achieve our goal of getting our license, there's no failure in that process.
No, and no one's expecting anybody to get through. I don't even think NCARB expects people to get through all the divisions without failing. If you look at the pass rates, they hover between 50 and 60% per division. Just mathematically, the odds are against you that you would pass in one shot, especially if you go in without studying. But yet, on the other hand, how many times have you said this or heard a friend of yours who's studying for the ARE say this, where I was sick the day that they took the test, and I didn't feel well, and that's why I didn't, and I'll hear people doing that before they even get their score report back. Like, they're already setting up their excuses, their rationale in their heads, or where they say, I don't get it. I've taken this exam 3 times, and on the score report, I've passed every section, but just not all at once, where they'll get level 1s and 2s on one section, and then they'll take it again and get level 3s and 4s. Whether it's under 4.0, under the vignettes, or under 5.0, I've heard that multiple times, where if they could cherry pick the best scores from each division, they would have passed entirely.
Right.
Or they go in and blame NCARB. It's the test, the way the test is written. If you're doing any of those things, no offense, but you're the problem. You're the issue here, because clearly you know enough to take the exam, and clearly a lot of other people are passing the test. It's not a question of intelligence. It's not even a question of how much time you spend studying, because I've heard that excuse too. I studied for 50 hours and I didn't pass. It's your fault. They'll blame me.
Right.
Right? Because you and David wrote these study guides. It's your fault.
I blame you. I just blame you for anyway.
Blame me. You're at this point. I have to give you a little tough love and say you're the problem, because you had everything you needed. You had the content, you had the experience. Clearly, you got an authorization to test, so NCARB thought you were ready. If you're not passing, it's because of this. It's because of this idea of mindset, which we should get into, which is this idea of having a fixed mindset versus switching over to what we call a growth mindset.
Okay, this is interesting. Fixed versus growth mindset, and I'll just give you my own example. And we just talked about at the beginning, of the show. I'm a constant learner, and I always have been. Always had a positive outlook. But when it came to the ARE, it took me 7 years to get licensed. This was back before the 5-year rolling clock. And in 98, I took programming without studying because I was in my mid-20s, had a bunch of experience because I went to the Boston Architectural Center. So I worked during the day, got my architecture degree at night. So I had a lot of real-world experience. So I was like, I don't need to study for programming. This was 98 when it just went to computer-based. I failed that exam and got mad at NCARB, and this is stupid. And I didn't take another exam for 2 years. And then cut to, which was a very fixed mindset, right? Blaming everybody else. And I'm not like that. Like any other aspect of my life, I wasn't like that. Just specific to this, just the damn exam.
Exactly. And this is pretty ordinary. A lot of these candidates that we speak with, and you listening at home, you majored in architecture. You went to college. You picked the toughest major of all. Clearly, you're already smarter than an average person. It's not about intelligence. It's really about this mindset. How many people have you met where they learn something and then stop? So the simplest example is, how many people have you met where they learned how to drive when they were 16? And they never, that's as good as they've gotten as being a driver, right? My mother, who, I love her, but she's a terrible driver. She learned how to drive when she was 16, and that was the extent of her growth as a driver. She has a very fixed mindset here, where I know everything I need to know. That's all I'm going to do, as opposed to a growth mindset where I started public speaking 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago, and I can honestly say that I will be a better speaker. I'm a better speaker today than I was 15 years ago, and I will be a better speaker next year than I am today. That's my goal, right? I'm striving to become better. I'm constantly thinking about it, working on it, and being better. I'm hoping that I'm doing this as an architect too. I'm hoping that I do it as a father. I hope that I'm doing it as a husband, where I'm doing it better each time. And with that, it's not about intelligence. It is about this idea of a growth mindset and about almost a bit of humility, in that I know that I suck at this, and I'm striving to get better.
Well, in that growth mindset, knowing that I suck at this and I want to get better, that also serves us being afraid not to fail. If we're so afraid to fail, we're not going to schedule the exam, or we're just going to make excuses and not even take it, right? So we can't be afraid to fail. Failure is going to happen in the exam. It's going to happen in life. You pick yourself up and you keep moving forward. That's the growth mindset. The fixed mindset would be you're so scared of this process, you might take an exam or two, fail one, and just blame NCARB, blame everybody else, blame your boss, and not look inward and just see, okay, what can I do better next time so I can take this exam again? Which, by the way, when you and I were taking, Eric, it was a 6-month wait. Now it's only 60 days to retake, which is I think is the best thing that NCARB has ever done, because it's just 60 days is nothing. It goes by like that, and you can focus on other exams.
Yeah, and you kind of need that time to study. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
I do realize that for many people listening, you failing a division, and hopefully you won't, but the odds are that you might fail at least one. You failing a division might be the first time that you've actually failed in your life.
Right.
Right. You did great in high school. You took honors levels and AP classes. You got into the college of your choice. You went to architecture school, the hardest major ever. You didn't sleep for 4 or 5 years, and you and you graduated with a degree in architecture. You worked at a firm. Your whole life has been, you working hard and nailing it. And now you're like, I studied for this, and NCARB's stupid.
Right. Exactly.
And you're going to, how many friends do you have that say, I don't want to schedule exam again because I don't want to go through the humiliating experience of possibly failing? That is the fixed mindset in a nutshell.
Well, and that is the fixed mindset. NCARB has been doing a lot of, I think, great work over the last couple of years of really trying to encourage candidates to take the exam and get licensed. They're doing another campaign. I'm seeing it on their Facebook ads where they're calling out to design professionals, hey, get your license. So that is the fixed mindset. NCARB recognizes there's enough of these so-called design professionals, which are basically people who graduated architecture school but never took the exams. There's enough of them out there that NCARB is reaching out to them. If it was only a few, NCARB, it wouldn't be worth it for NCARB to do it. But obviously there's a bunch, and that would be an example of the fixed mindset. We did the hard part. We went through architecture school. I have a good friend who completed IDP and still hasn't. He's my age now. Still hasn't taken the ARE, and I guess he probably won't at this point. But it's sad because we've done the hard part. The architecture school and IDP, that's the hard stuff.
Right, and I of course know the guy you're talking about, and he's a talented guy, but he'll be the first to come up with all of the reasons why I don't need to get licensed. I do this and that, and it just doesn't come up. He's rationalizing why. But if you think about it, when we're kids or when we're babies, we're in learning mode, right? We're going to try to walk. We're going to try to do this. We're going to try to do that. We're, and we don't worry about if we're going to make mistakes. My daughter is about to turn 9, and every day when she comes home from school, I say, "What mistakes did you make today?" This is a change that I've made with her. And when I first started doing it, she's like, "None," because of pride.
Right, of course.
And she said, "None. I was perfect all day because I'm your perfect little daughter." I'm like, "Oh, so you didn't learn anything today?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We learn by making mistakes. What mistakes did you make today?" And now, because we do this shtick every day,
right?
She comes home and "What mistakes did you make today?" Well, I got mad at a friend who said this thing to me, and I thought she was being mean, and I don't like the way that I reacted to it. And the teacher said this thing, and I answered it, but I was wrong, and then it made me feel this way. And so it's really opened up how we communicate as father and daughter, but also just in terms of her looking for opportunities to learn. I'm trying to instill in her this growth mindset.
It's so important. And you just made me think of an example with my oldest son, Jake, who was 10 and a half. This was about a month ago. I was getting on him about something. I can't remember what, but he just stopped and he's like, "Dad, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes." And I stopped and I said, "You know what, buddy? You're right." I said, you're not perfect and you do make mistakes. And I said, that's part of life and that's how we grow, but it was like a reminder of a mini me looking back, looking up at me and saying, "Hey, we make mistakes. It's part of the process." So I thought that was really interesting.
It really had to change because I think we do put this expectation on ourselves to be perfect now. And in doing so, we're locking ourselves into this fixed mindset. And also, just from a Freudian perspective of, I expect to be perfect. If I encounter failure, I've failed. I'm going to take that hard. And therefore, if I take a division and not pass, I'm going to procrastinate and drag my feet and to schedule another one. Because who the hell wants to go through that again?
Well, I think it's a comfort level too, right? Let's say we didn't get we haven't got licensed yet, but maybe we have a successful design practice, but that's a fixed mindset because now I'm scared because now I have a reputation in the community. I'm scared to actually try and go for my license because, oh my God, what if I fail and I have to explain to these people that, I can't pass the exams or I'm not getting or whatever it is. So we don't try, basically.
I remember when I took my California supplemental exam, which back then was the oral exam. And so we'd all gather at a hotel in South San Francisco and they'd take us through in waves and we'd sit in front of the 3 people with the binders and, that whole thing. But you're in this weird suburban hotel. You're sitting in the room waiting for your name to be called and you're nervous as hell. And in the room was I won't say who, but a very famous California architect who apparently, I didn't realize, was never licensed.
Really?
Yes. But he's famous where you could identify him on sight. Right? Just seeing him.
Right.
And of course he's wearing all black with black glasses. Right. Total cliche architect. But he's also visibly older than the rest of us. I mean, I think I was 27 or 28, right? As was everybody else in the room. And this guy is in his 40s, I'm assuming. But apparently he'd never been And so I said, "Hey man, how you doing? Are you nervous?" And he said, "I have to pass today."
Wow.
And no amount of humiliation. No, if I don't pass, I'm going to do it as soon as possible. Like he just through circumstance was pushed into, I have no choice but to pass. Now that's a lot of pressure on him,
right?
But also means he wasn't making excuses. He wasn't saying, I spent my life becoming a famous architect and never had time to get a license. He was like, he had this mindset of no matter what's happening, I'm passing today.
Right.
And it was just kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's mindset, and obviously it took him a little while to get there, right? He had 20 years of making excuses.
Yes.
Of that fixed mindset, right? And then once he adopted the growth mindset, it's like, okay, I'm going to prepare for this. I'm going to do it. So, how do we determine? Like maybe I'm listening to this podcast and I'm listening to us and I'm like, well, I don't know if I have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. How do I know which one I have?
Do you find that you're making rationalizations or excuses for why you failed? If you really were to think about it, do you find that you're not being honest with yourself of, what could you have done better? In other words, are you learning, let's say you took a division and did not pass. That sucks, right? It's a shame. But are you then using that as an opportunity to learn? Just like I'm doing with my daughter. What mistakes did you make today? Are you then saying to yourself, what could I have done better? If I'm really being honest with myself, what could I have done better? If you're pointing blame, you're probably got a fixed mindset.
Right. So if I take an exam and I fail and NCARB sucks and the study material sucks and everybody sucks, that's obviously not a growth mindset. We know that. But that's also putting the blame on everyone else and not taking any responsibility for my failure at all. Everyone else is responsible. Yeah.
And so I was sick that, I've heard every excuse under the sun now. I was sick that day. I heard someone say, my mother died 2 months before. 2 months, 2 months. Okay. I'm sorry, but I don't think they're related. 2 months, I had a lot of deadlines at work. I'm only taking this because the rolling clock, NCARB screwing me with the rolling clock. Like all those excuses, it's like, take some responsibility for your situation yourself. You're the one that chose to study or didn't study. You're the one that went in there. But also when you're studying, are you skimming through and like, I know this. I tell this example on the phone all the time, where the first two firms I work for, they prepared their own punch lists, right? And so I grew up thinking that architects were responsible for producing punch lists. And it wasn't until I was studying for the California supplemental exam. I mean, I already passed the ARE at that point, but it wasn't until I was studying for the supplemental exam that I learned, oh, contractors are responsible for punch lists. Oh, crap. Really? Right. And at first, my first thought was, oh, this must be a typo in the study guide. I'm like, are you sure? Because my mindset was like, no, I couldn't be wrong about something as big as that. But I was totally wrong about it. So there's a certain humility that I think you need to have in that. I've never taken these tests before. I'm opening myself up to this experience. I'm willing to admit that I don't know everything. That takes a bit of bravery if you're not used to doing that.
Well, and that's, I'm looking over our show notes and nowhere in here do we mention the one word that I think actually we have to mention, which you're touching on, and it's ego.
Yes.
It's almost like ego has no place in growth mindset. And if you're in fixed mindset, your ego is probably bigger than it should be, right? Because your ego is the one who's giving you all that self-talk and blaming everyone else.
Right.
And, you look at a lot of successful people, whether it's, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett. Obviously, all these people have growth mindsets. And, let's face it, their egos, I mean, we all have a little bit of ego, right? A healthy ego is healthy. But their egos are not at the forefront. I think you could look at any of those three and say, no, they don't have a huge ego.
Bill Gates, one of the wealthiest men in the world, he's a voracious reader. Many might consider him one of the smartest people in the world, right? He's a voracious reader, reads, I think, a book a day is what I remember reading about him.
Oh, wow.
And someone asked him, what do you need to read for? He's like, well, that's the purpose. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm in a position where I can read, where I have the time now to read. And he said, I'm learning. I'm constantly learning. So here's a guy that's clearly, he's an older gentleman, already successful by any standard definition, and he's reading as much as he possibly can. He's constantly learning. He's thirsty for the knowledge, especially as he gets older, he said. So it's fascinating to see that.
It is, and that's the ability to put your ego to the side in a safe place and be like, no, I don't know everything. I want to learn more. Wanting to learn more is the growth mindset, and that's what we started at the beginning with that quote you mentioned. There's learners and there's non-learners, and the non-learners are the non-successful people, and it makes sense. The learners are the ones who are going to be successful.
So I should say all of this really is based on this book by Carol Dweck called Mindset.
Right,
called Mindset.
Wait, say that. I'm sorry, I just stepped on your words, but that's right. We were talking about a book too. We didn't get to that yet.
This book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. I mean, it's in the title, but that's the book that kind of started this whole discussion. And so, in it, she said, it's not an all or nothing thing. You might have a fixed mindset about certain things and a growth mindset about others. So, for instance, I'm trying to learn rock climbing now in my late 40s.
You are?
Yeah. I'm doing it indoors. I'm not doing it like you're doing it in nature. I'm doing it indoors in a climate-controlled facility with a harness, the whole thing. But I went in there like, oh, I've never done this before. I'm going to break my neck. I had to go in there with a growth mindset because it's like I'm new to this. I don't know anything. Tell me. Right. I have no ego in this at all. I don't even care how stupid I look in the harness.
Right.
I'm there for fun. But with architecture, that might be that you might have a growth mindset and everything else. With architecture, that's where your ego, your reputation, your stubbornness might start to really creep in. So you might end up having a fixed mindset only about these exams and nothing else.
I think that's actually a great point, because that's what was going on with me back in my early career with failing programming, whatever it was called at that time. There's 9 divisions then. But failing and being like, screw this, didn't do anything for 2 years, but I was successful. I moved to New York, then to California, and then I started my own office. So everything else I had the growth mindset in, but you're right, that fixed mindset was only related to the ARE.
It happens. And so, step 1 is kind of changing your attitude, listening to your rationale, seeing how you're dealing or coping with the failure. Those are the things that are kind of leading you to, do I have a fixed mindset with this aspect of my life? And you might only have it with this and nothing else. So, and that's fine.
In the start of that, it sounds like, is really just look at the one word blame. And if I'm upset about something, let's say the ARE, if I'm blaming anybody at all for my failure, then I have a fixed mindset. I mean, it's really that simple, because the test is passable. There's materials out there that help us pass the test. Many people have passed it. So if I can't pass it, it's not because of NCARB. It's not because of the materials. It's because I can't get out of my own way. And until we can admit that and stop blaming other people for our failure, we're going to be stuck in the fixed mindset.
Right. There are certain things in my life I know are not for me. I know that as a 5'9", 46-year-old Jew, I will never be starting forward for the 76ers, right? I just know that, that's out of my reach. But I do know that these tests, which if you think about it, you've prepped your whole life for, right? Before you even went to college, you were thinking about architecture probably. and into it. And then you went through school and you made all these friends and you read all these books and you invested all this time and effort from a Malcolm Gladwell perspective in terms of expertise. You put in your 10,000 hours, and so with these tests, you have everything you need to know to pass them. Now, granted, in studying, you might be learning new topics, but you're even equipped for understanding this information that we're giving you. Everything in our study guides, you've been exposed to at least once. It might only have been once, but at least once, and you've just forgotten. Now's your chance to then relearn this or refresh on it and apply this knowledge. And so all of you have the capability of passing this exam, and your ego shouldn't have anything to do with it.
And not only that, I think everybody deserves to pass this exam and deserves to be licensed. You know, we've done the hard work, and NCARB is not standing in our way from getting our license. It's just one of the things we have to do. It's another checkbox that we have to check off on our road to licensure, as much as we had to check off the degree in architecture school and the IDP. We just have to check off this NCARB thing. So they're not a roadblock. They're just another, part of the process, and we all deserve to get licensed. Now, some of us are just going to have to work harder than others, and that's just the way it is, as in life.
Right. Spending all this time with NCARB over the last year with the 5.0 transition, really made, these guys, they want the candidates to pass. Their feelings look hurt when I say to them, candidates hate the rolling clock, and they think you're trying to trick them. Like they want you to pass. It's not only in their best interest to have you pass, but they want to create future generations of architects. These guys are nerds about this stuff. It's been very fun working with them and getting to know them and see their enthusiasm for testing people in architecture. It's kind of funny.
I was just thinking too, another probably a great example of do I have a fixed mindset or not is I take an exam, I fail it. Not only am I mad at NCARB, I'm now mad I have to shell out another $150, whatever it is, to retake. And
$210.
Is it $210 to retake? Like, so if your mindset goes to, oh man, I got to shell out another $210 to NCARB, that's bull. I'm not doing that. Like, if that's where your mindset is, then that's a fixed mindset.
Yes.
And not that I would enjoy paying another $210. I had to take 2 exams over again. But if you just step back and look at the big picture, what's going on here, you've invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in your architecture education. You've invested time in IDP. Hopefully you're making money in some form of an employment. Another $210, I don't want to minimize it. It's a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things, it's not, and it shouldn't be an excuse that keeps you on your path to getting your license.
Right. So, I've outlined some kind of ideas of how you can change your mindset. If you feel that you're suffering from this, especially in regard to the ARE, but even if it's in regard to other aspects of your life, you've all worked with people like this where, they do all the construction administration for the firm, and they've been doing it forever, and they have this mindset almost with an ego about it of, I know what I'm doing. You don't tell me. We've all encountered these folks in different aspects of our life. Even I've encountered auto mechanics like this where, they're very stubborn and they won't listen to anything else. I've certainly encountered structural engineers like this. If you feel that you're suffering from this fixed mindset on any aspect of your life, but especially with the ARE, there's a couple of things that you should focus on that we should address of how to change your mindset. And then I put together some examples, and we'll put them in the show notes on the webpage as well. But examples of how you can approach a scenario differently. So
before we do that, which I want to do, I think it's important to just first identify that I do have a fixed mindset and admit that and put the ego aside a little bit and say, you know what, this is on me. I have a fixed mindset, and I'm going to change that.
Yes. Dr. Dwight covers this in the Mindset book, but so this is my kind of regurgitation of what I learned in the book. But first, focus on the act of learning over just the achievement. Accept the fact that these exams are hard and you will struggle. And instead of looking for excuses or depending upon the situation being right or depending on luck or even worse, depending on this myth of natural talent, I was a born architect. Instead of focusing on any of that, just accept these exams are hard. You will struggle. You do need to study and really focus on improving your skills, your abilities, developing those, learning from your efforts, and just focus on this idea of learning over achievement. That's step one.
I like that one. And also to that point is, as we talked about before, with 5.0, the material we're learning, the stuff we're learning, it's not just one-off for the exam. This is stuff that will make us better architects, and we're going to continue to use it in our career. So we should want to learn this material. Yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing that we encounter a lot with these candidates. David and I both do. With that what do I need to study this for? Well, you're going to be an architect probably for your whole career. So you need to understand contracts now, not only to pass the test, but also because ideally you're going to be using them, every day.
Well, in speaking, let's go to the growth mindset for a second. If I say, well, I don't want to learn the contracts, or why do I need to learn the contracts? If you don't learn the contracts now, 20 years down the road, if you want to open your own firm, you're going to have to know how contracts work. You're going to have to grow. You're going to have to learn that. So, we should be coming at this, especially for the area. We should just be sponges and just wanting to absorb whatever we can absorb. What's next? What's next on your list?
So once you've done this, you've accepted that you might have a fixed mindset. You're now focusing on learning over achievement. The final step is to commit to changing your mindset. Even a fixed mindset is not a fixed thing. As funny as that sounds, even a fixed mindset is not a fixed thing. You can change it. You have the power to do that. Even just knowing that there are these two mindsets, that they exist, and that you're suffering a little bit from this, you have these blind spots. I have clients at the X Prize, and they call them biases. Knowing that you have these biases towards a certain way of thinking. Just knowing that these two mindsets exist, you can start thinking and reacting in new ways.
Well, and not only that, understanding that you are the only person who can change your mindset. Nobody else can change it. No, spouse, NCARB, whoever. Only you can change it. And when you boil it down, as you mentioned, Eric, there's only two, either fixed or growth growth. Which one are you going to pick? It's not difficult. I mean, you just pick one. And the one you pick is going to set out, is going to lay out the opportunities that exist or lack of opportunities that exist for the remainder of your career.
Exactly. So I outlined a couple of these scenarios, and we'll put them on the show notes on the webpage. But as you approach a challenge, the old fixed mindset would say, are you sure you can do it? Maybe you don't have the talent to do it. The growth mindset says, I'm not sure if I can do it now. I might fail, but I think I'll learn. And I'll learn how to do it. And I know if I apply time and effort, I can overcome it. So it's coming at it with a certain sense of humility as opposed to coming at it with a sense of fear.
Well, and also to this fixed mindset, this grouping you have right here, I would add to I'm not ready. Like, I think that's the most one of the most common. I'm not ready.
Yes.
But I'm not following that up with, I'm not saying I'm not ready, but I'm going to make a plan to get ready. I'm not ready, period, and it just stops there.
We have a few goal setting podcasts and blogs that you and I have done. And that's one of the things we always say is set a date. Okay, if you want this goal of, in this case, becoming a licensed architect, then don't just say I'm going to do it in the future or when I'm ready. Set an actual deadline, set a date. By December 2017, I will be a licensed architect. Okay, then what do I need to do that? And Yeah, stop making excuses about it. Correct.
And what's your next one?
The next one is that internal voice. The fixed mindset says, what if I fail? I'll be a failure. Now, you might not say that out loud, but you're feeling it.
And
if you're feeling...
And not only that, you'll have to admit that you failed to your peers or people that know you're taking the exam. You at least you feel like you'll have to let them know, like, hey, I failed at this test, and they think you're going to be like, you must suck as an architect.
And this, by the way, comes up a lot with the ARE because in some cases your firm might be paying for it. So they know you're taking the test because they wrote the check, and then the next day you come in, how'd you do? Oh, I haven't gotten the score report back yet. And then 2 weeks later, so did you get that score report? Yeah, so you've got added pressure on you.
Right.
Like, hey, we're investing our time and money in you. We're hoping that you pass here. So if you have this, what if I fail? I'll be a failure. You want to change that thinking to all the most successful people in the world have had failures, right? Thomas Edison is the quintessential expression of failure. He had over, I think it was 2,700 different attempts to figure out the filament for a light bulb.
Right.
And they said, Lee, you've had 2,700 failures so far. And he said, no, I haven't. I've had 2,700 examples of how not to create a light bulb. Right? He definitely had a growth mindset. So most successful people have had failures along the way. This is not going to make or break your life. The odds are against you that you're going to pass all the tests in one shot anyway. Only weirdos and freaks like me do that, right? It's not a normal thing. Most people do what David did and take their time.
Well, and to your point, when you're saying, look at most successful people, I would even say just look at the people in your firm. Your boss may or may not even be a licensed architect, but look at the principal. And if you can chew his or her ear for a bit, ask them their exam taking experience. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't a smooth road like you had, Eric. They probably had their struggles and, their failures. So they know what you're going through. But I think sometimes as candidates, we feel like we're the only one going through it and everyone else just smooth sailed through.
Yeah, I think, and I think in this era of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, we always have this perception everybody's life looks so perfect.
Right.
It's not. Everybody's a hot mess is what I've discovered, and they're only showing you a small segment of their life.
Exactly. All right, what's the next one?
Next one, the fixed mindset is, well, if I don't try, I won't get hurt. If I don't try, I can protect myself and keep my dignity.
And keep my ego intact, right?
And keep my ego, right? If I don't try, I won't fail. That's the fixed mindset. And you might not say those exact words, but it manifests itself in, I'm going to give myself another year before I reschedule. Or I'm going to wait until, I finish this project. Or, there's no time like the present. The growth mindset is, if I don't try, I've already failed. Where's the dignity in that? Not trying is the failure. That's the failure.
Exactly.
That is and those aren't just Tony Robbins inspirational type words here. That's the truth. If when I was in high school, I wanted to ask this girl to the dance, and I was nervous about it. And I said to my dad, "What do I do?" And he said, "Just go ask her." Right? And I said, "But what if she says no? What if she And he said, okay, if you don't ask her, what are the odds she's going to go to the dance with you? And I said, well, none. He's like, yeah. And if you do ask her, what are the odds? Well, pretty low. And he goes, yeah, but they're more than zero, right. Schmuck. Go ask her.
So this is what I think it's Wayne Gretzky who said this one. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yes, exactly. And so that is a perfect example. Not God, if I don't try, I won't get hurt. But if I don't try, I've already failed.
And you might have people in your firm that you work with who have adopted this fixed mindset. They might be, a position or two above you, and they might look like they have all their stuff together. and they might kind of frown upon you because you're taking the exam and they never did, and they just like, I don't need it. I don't need it for what I'm doing here, you know. But deep down inside, you know, they're wishing they had it, because I mean, let's face it, anybody who's been through architecture school and through IDP wants to get licensed, whether they actually do or not. They want to. We all want.
I talked to this woman last week. She said, "I'm not even working in architecture anymore. I was in the field for 10 years. Now I'm selling real estate, and I'm making a lot more money. But I'm selling real estate." And I said, "Oh, so what do you want to get licensed for?" She said, "I want to get licensed for me.
Exactly.
I went to architecture school. I want to do it for me. I don't need it for anything. Nobody's asking me to do it. I want it for me." And I said, "Oh, you got the right approach."
Right, and there's no question that she'll get it done. You know, whether she fails a few times, that remains to be seen. But you know, in a year or so, she'll be licensed. Yeah,
no doubt.
You know, what's another one?
Oh, this is, if you hit a setback. Let's say you don't pass a division, or worse, you haven't even gotten your score report yet, but you just walked out of the testing center and you're like, "Oh my God, I blew that one big time." The fixed mindset would be, I could have passed this if I was any good, if I had any talent. This would have been a snap for me if I'd studied harder. Like all of those, like where you're beating yourself up and looking for really, the what if. And that's the fixed mindset. The growth mindset would be, nobody's good at everything. Nobody's born perfect. Even Michael Jordan sucked at basketball the first time he picked up a ball. Thomas Edison had struggled with science just like everybody else. There's a very famous one of Albert Einstein failed math when he was in high school, and then went on to redefine physics. Nobody's good at anything right off the bat, and if they are, that's the rarity. That's the exception, not the rule. The key is that the Michael Jordans of the world, the Thomas Edisons of the world, they didn't have natural talent. They had passion, and they put in tons of effort, and they made it happen. So there is no idea of everything comes easy for anybody.
No, it's a ton of effort, and sometimes, especially, I think you're right, on Facebook, it looks like a lot of this stuff just comes easy to people. It doesn't come easy to anybody. Everybody's working. We just don't see all the hard work. I was just recently reading. I'm not a Patriots fan, even though I'm from New England. But Tom Brady, who arguably the best quarterback ever, he was picked in, I think it was the 2000 draft. He was picked 6th round. So 6th round is like way down in the gutter as far as the draft is concerned. So he wasn't, and they said he was slow and all these reasons why he obviously didn't go in the first few rounds. But he obviously had the drive and the passion and worked hard, and he is where he is now. Obviously, he had the growth mindset.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so
I have one more.
You got another one?
Yeah, this is the last one. When you are confronted with this setback or with criticism or things that you don't like, this is where the blaming comes in.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault. It was the rolling clock's fault. It wasn't my fault. My dog was, I actually heard someone say this to me 2 weeks ago. They said my dog was sick the night before. I said, "So your dog ate your homework? Is that what you're telling me?" My dog was sick and I was up all night with my dog. The rolling clock's fault. It's NCARB's fault. It's everybody else's fault but mine. The testing center. That's a big one. Testing center was too cold, too hot. It smelled. Someone said to me, "It smelled in there." I couldn't focus on the test. It smelled in there. I said, "What did it smell like?" They said, "Well, it smelled like BO." I'm like, okay, then eventually, don't you get nose deaf too? I don't know. It's go. Don't worry. You're letting that affect you. So the growth mindset would be, you know what? If I don't take responsibility for this, I can't fix it. If I can't accept that I had a role in this, I can't do anything about it. I'm going to listen, however painful or hard it is to hear. I'm going to listen to this experience. I'm going to learn from this experience and learn whatever I can from this experience. That's hard to do. especially when ego and pride are involved in something as, like an architecture exam.
Right. Yeah, I think this is probably the I don't know if it's the most common, but it's probably the most detrimental to the fixed mindset is always blaming somebody else and not looking inward, not taking responsibility, whatever it would be. And also setting expectations, I guess, in some respects, in terms of these testing centers. The testing centers, they're just testing centers. They're all over the board. We all know the reports of too hot, too cold, they smell, whatever. It's just, you just got to roll with it. Whatever comes up is like, okay, I'm prepared. I'm taking this exam. Nobody's going to stop me. Like, the architect that you mentioned, the California architect who you didn't realize wasn't licensed, he made the decision, like, I'm going to take it. You just have to, you can't let anything get in your way, whether it's a sick dog or a smelly testing center. You got a job to do, and you deserve to do it, and you deserve to take it and eventually get your license.
Exactly. Right. So, when the explorer Cortez arrived at the New World, his men encountered violent opposition from the Native Americans, and the men wanted to retreat. They wanted to get back on the ships and leave. And so Cortez set fire to his ships and sunk them into the sea. And the men said, "What have you done? You've doomed us all." And Cortez said, "No, now you have no choice but to fight. You need to sink, all of us need to sink our ships a little bit. All of us need to burn our ships to the ground and put us in a position where, no, I'm passing this. I got to pass. I got too much other stuff going on at work and life, I see this a lot with I have a friend. She used our study materials. She used David's study materials for the CSE as well. She's got 2 kids. She runs her own firm. She doesn't have time to fail. Like, she's like, I'm going to work my ass off and study because I don't have time. I got to pass. And so I got to be real humble here. I got to study everything I can. Tell me what else I need to know. She was the most humble you can imagine. She's like, what else do I need to cover? Am I doing this right? She had the perfect mindset for this. She was in learning mode because she knew she had to learn in order to pass, and she did. And it was great to watch. I mean, she was a huge pain in the ass to me and David at the time because she was asking us a million questions. But it was great to watch and see her go through that.
And what's interesting about that is, that I have to pass no matter what. That's her mindset was different than sort of coming from a place of desperation where I have to pass no matter what. There's kind of like there's 2 ways to interpret that. And if we're coming out of a place of desperation, which essentially is a fixed mindset, I know when I took the CSE, it was oral, and I came out of a place is like, I got to pass this thing. I'm not taking it again. I want to take it one time. So, I probably spent $1,100 on classes and seminars and studied because I needed to pass. I wanted to pass. I wasn't coming from a place of desperation. I was coming from a place of, I was doing a lot of residential work. I was coming from a place of being tired of saying to clients here when I was in California, saying to clients that, yeah, I'm a licensed architect in New York because that's where my original paperwork was, but I'm not a licensed architect in California, so I can't advertise my services. I got tired of that whole spiel, so it was like, no, I got to take the exam and I got to pass, and I studied, and that's what I did.
Yeah, there you
go. What else do we have? Anything else in the book that is of particular interest before we wrap up?
Yeah, just, now that you're aware of these 2 mindsets, whether you read the book or not, you don't need to. There's even some articles that you can read about the book, so you don't even need to buy the book if you don't want. And there's even a way you can test your mindset online. It's mindsetonline.com if you want to do it, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. But, is there somebody in your office, maybe an older person? I don't want to stereotype, but maybe it's an older person or a career person, the kind of person who's been at the firm, for their entire career. They've only worked in that one office probably. And at some point, they just decided I'm just at good enough level. Like this is my extent, and they just stopped growth and development at that point. You all know people like this. I'm sure they're nice people and they're great on the team softball league and all that other stuff. But that's what you want to avoid. You don't want to be in that fixed mindset. You want to avoid that. You want to be a lifelong student.
You don't want to get to a point where you say I'm good enough. Never. Don't stop. Exactly.
You want to be willing to try new things, new materials. I deal with this with my sustainability consulting, right? I got old white male principal of a firm who's been building the same way for 35 years, and we talking about sustainability and new materials and new building methods, and they're like, "Man, we don't need that, man." But then I've met the same exact old white guy principal who's like, "Yeah, let's try it, let's do it, let's." Frank Gehry, whether you like his work or not, he's dealing with technologies today that didn't exist 3 years ago, let alone when his career began. So he even started his own tech company based on the things that he was trying and putting together. So it's kind of incredible. It's not about age. It's not about intelligence. It's really just about this idea of, am I a lifelong student? Am I seeking to grow and improve all the time?
Yeah. And I think as we get older, we get wiser, right? And we learn from our mistakes. I think when we're younger and we don't learn from our mistakes, i.e. failing a division, we don't learn from that. And as we mentioned before, if we blame, then that's not going to get us anywhere. But it's, when we get older and wiser and we make mistakes, we're, oh, well, not everybody, but, we try and learn. We continue to try and learn from it. We're always making mistakes.
Yes.
Alrighty, I think that is going to wrap up our episode on mindset. On behalf of Eric Corey Freed, my name is David Doucette, and we will see you on the next ARE podcast.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE